Hello again, and apologies for the length of time since the last video, but been away on holiday and fitted a bathroom and had a birthday, so a fair amount packed in the last few weeks. Anyway, looking at my layout, I was very unhappy with what I thought was a river scene. It went through a chasm basically, and the river on scale size really was minute and more of a rivulet. So I've decided to change all that out and create a canal, because basically it did look pretty pants. So that is what I'm going to be doing. I had a general idea of what I wanted to do and had an old Pico tunnel portal which I was going to use as the canal portal. So in this clip you see the first fit of the Kingspan insulation foam to create the hillside that the canal will run through. Once I was happy with the dimensions of the tunnel opening, I set about making the portal, and for this I was wrong. I didn't have a Pico tunnel portal. It's in fact leftover parts from the Pico viaduct. So I've extended the height somewhat using capping stones on each leg, and then one half of the viaduct arch I've cut in half and added to each side of the main arch, just so it fits into the hillside more effectively. I then added some Pico brick sheet just inside the portal and used a bit of pipework, PVC pipework, to create the top of the tunnel, and I coated that with scale scenes brick paper, which I knew was going to be safe using the liquid water later on, because it was well above the height of the water level I wanted, and any liquid water that touched the portal would be accommodated by the plastic Pico brickwork on the lower section. I then went about painting various stages of painting the brick inside and weathering that, and doing some little bit of weathering on the scale scenes paper, and then put my attention to the outer portal granite work using various techniques with an undercoat of grey primer, followed by washes and various streaking effects and colouring effects using greens, because it's above water, and on a hillside there'll be more algal growth, which I've kept to a limited amount, but I think it looks okay. And that has been topped off with matte clear varnish. So that was then test fitted, and once I was happy with that, removed and moved on to the next stage. I totally forgot to video the stage of adding plaster cloth to the hillside, but I did that and then inserted the tunnel portal. I didn't go over the top with the plaster cloth, as I just wanted to get a hardened base to keep things rigid, and my plan was to go over it later with a paper mache type coating. And you can see that in the next image, where I'm looking down, or you're looking down on the portal, and you can see the back of the portal is packed with newspaper. Once I'd done that, I then moved on to adding paper mache, which is all covered in the next few clips. In this view, you can see that I have, prior to fitting the tunnel portal, spray painted the inside of the tunnel with black paint, matte, and then inserted the tunnel portal. And the bits of wood that you see are basically the dam that I'm going to use, which are MDF. They've been coated and they will be painted later on, as you will see, and they will be the dam for the liquid water at the rear of the scene. I don't intend pouring the water further in than I needed to, and because of the viaduct and the bridge, the view into the tunnel is somewhat obscured. So it seemed that it would be a waste of the liquid water. I'm now moving on to painting the hillside with my standard undercoat colour, which I picked up second hand in technical terms from Homebase. It was from their mixing range, and someone obviously had it mixed and didn't like the colour. So I picked it up at half price for £12 or £15, I think, for quite a large tin. They do call it praline. Sounds very nice, but when you look at the colour, I think it's probably another colour. I then moved on to painting the floor of the canal. I used a number of colours, which you'll see shortly. I thought it was best to paint at this stage and the sides in order to just prevent any weeping of the plaster of Paris that I originally used into the mix of things later on, and in case I missed things with regard to the pilings that I was going to insert later. So as you can see, it was just basic colours. I might well adjust this uh, later. I just want to live with it for a bit. I'm not going to be pouring the liquid water in, although it is a liquid, the artificial water in just yet. I just want to give myself a few days, maybe a couple of weeks, just to make sure I am really happy with what's happening in the canal base. I've also got to add weeds and things. I should also say that I painted the canal base with the praline, and whilst still wet, then added the other colours in order to sort of smear and merge them together, so you had the reflective effect from the what will be trees and the sky in the water. As you know, water is not crystal clear in a canal, so I will be adding maybe some dyes to the uh, artificial water, but again, I've got to just think about what it's going to look like. So I'm now moving on to the pilings that run along the edge of the canal to protect the banks from damage and erosion. I did a bit of research on Google, and I've forgotten the actual technical term, but these pilings are made of a steel, and it's an interlocking steel that has a ripple or a corrugated type effect. Now, as you know, I like designing and creating my own items from scratch building for the layout. So I decided to make my own, and I opted for, based on the dimensions I saw on Google, to use 2mm MDF in 2 layers. One just a straight plain strip, about 28 to 30mm high, and the second, a bit like scale scenes do their corrugations, 2mm MDF, but cut with 4mm gaps. So it's essentially 1 foot gap, 1 foot solid metal, 1 foot gap, which gives the effect that I was looking for. I should also say that the parts that I'm cutting out I save for later, as you'll see that they will act as a coping along the top of the pilings, and obviously 2mm plus 2mm stuck together is 4mm, and each of the pieces that I've cut out are 4mm, so they were a virtually precise fit. You may notice that on each row as I move down, I part glue the outside strip, but then leave a gap for the next one, but then the next one down gets glued, and this is so that I can essentially create an interlock to glue the piling parts together. You'll see the paint that I intend to use on the pilings, which again comes from Homebase, but it's L Decoration by Crown, and it's absolute granite. It is one of their various black or shades of black, but it, in my opinion, has a slight chalky appearance and a dullish appearance, which obviously coated metal when immersed in water and exposed to the elements gets that sort of patina of just a dustiness to it. So I thought that looked quite good. Okay, it's now the next day and everything is dried. I've cut the canal sides from the actual former that they were stuck to, so they are now in the sheets I'm hoping to use. And as I said, I've overlapped so that when they join, I've got a hidden join hopefully, and it will be nice and snug once glued up. There's a little bit of flexibility in these bits, as you can see, so it should flow around the edges of the canal. So as I said last night, save these bits, which are the parts that came out from these bits. And what I've been planning to do is, having looked at photographs of canals in the UK and elsewhere, there is a capping strip generally across the top. So what I'm going to do is, as it's 4mm wide and it's 2mm depth and 2mm depth, each of these strips will fit nicely across the top as a capping strip. Now I can either do that as a concrete capping strip or metal, then have concrete on top of that. So I'm planning, I'll work that out later on in the build of the canal.
But first of all, let's get some of these stuck on and cut to length. So obviously there's quite a few, so I've got plenty to work with. First bit. And the second piece.
And here are the pilings, one of the pilings, fully glued up with the capping row cut back, and you can see the effect that the two layers have, and it's now ready for priming with Rustin's quick drying MDF clear sealer, allowing that to dry overnight and then painting it with the paint that I discussed earlier from Crown, the Absolute Granite. And here are the pilings painted with Absolute Granite. And the next image will be the pilings weathered. I should point out that this weathering is just the greens of algae that have attached to the pilings. I've not added the rust effects to it or a scum line, but you'll see those later on near the end of the video.
Okay, from the last photograph, you saw the canal pilings in a painted state, and now I'm fitting the first side. I've used Gorilla epoxy, and hopefully that won't react if any gets onto the river bed or canal bed, but I will overpaint any excess and scrape some away, as you can see there. But all in all, I think that is looking quite good. The white line, or the light coloured line, is like a scum mark, because the canals do vary in height just minimally, depending on temperature. So hopefully that'll be at the right height for the poured water.
And here is a view with the other bank fitted, and a view through to the canal portal. I was thinking of leaving it at this point, the pilings, but I felt that the central viaduct stanchion couldn't just sit on an island that could erode. So I have put pilings around that on the main canal side, and my plan is to then bring in, say, a little bit of rock to the right hand side, which gives it slightly more solidity, as it would in real life.
Okay, that is now the gaps either side of the canal siding filled, and I will make a small piece of MDF to fit in on top of the area. If I put my finger down in there, just to look like the towpath continues in, which should have been the old-fashioned for horses to pull the canal boats through before they got motors. I'm not going to be worried too much about the little bit of polyfiller that's dropped in there, because once it's dry I can hoover up fairly quickly, and I've still got to repaint some of the bits, especially to the rear, where I've just increased the height slightly of the dam and clean that bit of wood off, and then that should all be waterproofed